The United States Army is ran by Freemasons. Okay, all the people, all the top brass with rank in the Army are Freemasons, whether they'll admit to it or not. General Petraeus, he's a Freemason. All right, that's why he was in charge of Iraq and Afghanistan for a while. But what I know, there's two sides of the Army. There's the enlisted side and the officer side. All right, and I was deployed with a staff sergeant, which is an E6, and I noticed him studying some Freemason shit. Right when we were in Afghanistan during some downtime, he was reading a book with the logo on the cover and shit, the Freemason logo, right? And so I said I didn't really ask him about Freemasonry at that time. I didn't really that's not really where my head was at. But I asked him. I said, "Well, what's up with that shit right there? What are you studying? You know what I mean?" And he said, he's trying to become a Freemason because he said you'll learn about it as your Army career progresses. But basically, he said that he didn't call it a secret society. He called it a fraternity. All right, and he said Freemasons are basically a fraternity, and in order to get your E8, which is a master sergeant or a first sergeant in the Army, you got to be part of the Freemasons. And in the military, we have a thing. It's almost like your resume from the military. It's called an ERB, which is a enlisted record brief. All right, and there's also a DD 214 when you get out. That's your discharge paperwork. Both of those have a M on them if you're a Mason, if you're a Freemason. I've seen a couple ERBs that had those on there. All right, and I mean, long story short, there's a part of the Army called S1, all right, and I was like fucking around with this chick that worked for S1, which is like a paper pusher job in the Army, and I was kicking it with her one day, and I just happened to glance at a couple ERBs. I wanted to see what some of these first sergeants and the sergeant major in my unit, what kind of credentials they had and shit. I was looking at their awards on there and stuff, and I asked her what that shit was. I noticed the M on there, and that's what she told me. She said, "Oh, that means they're Masons." I don't really know what it is, but it's something it's some kind of club that E8s and above are in, all right? And it makes perfect sense because on the enlisted side, E8 and E9 are the key leadership roles, all right? Like, I mean, they try to tell you in the Army, like, oh, NCOs are the backbone of the Army, and all those E5 and E6s, sergeants and staff sergeants that are out there with the soldiers are the backbone of the Army, which may be true, but all they're really doing is relaying orders from Freemasons, all right? And this user said something about Eagle Scouts, and Eagle Scouts is the only type of fraternity that helps you move up in the Army. And I think he misunderstood me. Okay, Eagle Scouts, you can go in as a private E2 instead of a private E1. It's a higher pay grade. It's like $40 more a month. Okay, when I went into the Army, I was an E1. That's the lowest you can go as far as rank. Okay, because I didn't have any credentials. I'm not an Eagle Scout, nothing like that. But if you were an Eagle Scout, you can join the Army as an E2. Okay, that's the only benefit there is to being an Eagle Scout when it comes to the Army. Now, the reason why I'm sort of concerned about the Freemason shit being intertwined with the Army is because we all know that some really evil men in our history were Freemasons, all right? And if you try to look up like your local Freemason lodge or whatever, like they actually have websites for different chapters of Freemason lodges or whatever, okay? And which it's a secret society, so I don't know why they got websites, but anyways, they paint this picture of themselves as being good men who believe in a higher power and all that, but the Freemasons that are higher in the ranks, the 31st, 32nd, 33rd degree Freemasons that are up there at the top of the pyramid, all right, like they don't have good intentions for us. And like JFK said in his secret society speech, he gave a speech on this shit, and he said that you know, um, they're gonna push their agenda by ways of um, infiltration instead of invasion, which is what they're already doing with some of our shit we have on TV. They're programming us through whichever means they can, okay, and it's working on a lot of people, which is why there's a lot less people awake than asleep right now, okay, and um, if shit starts hitting the fan and they try to implement martial law and all that, you better believe I got like a whole bunch of people behind me already, and I'm behind all them too. And strength in numbers, like I've said before, there's so many people in our world, yet a tiny little group of people run our world, and they're fucking it up. And something needs to be done about them, okay? Most soldiers, most veterans either don't know what's going on because they're not very observant and very insightful, and they don't really figure out what's going on around them, or they've just been brainwashed into believing that the ways they were taught in the military are right, and they're not, especially the whole shitty attitude towards civilians, okay? Like I've said before, there's plenty of guys I was in the army with that would say, oh, fucking civilians, okay? Those young kids are getting brainwashed into thinking that they're better than civilians because it's going to make their job a lot easier when it comes time for martial law, all right? And not only that, but the way the Afghani people were treated by our soldiers when I was over in Afghanistan for 16 months, it was sickening. Those people, a lot of the soldiers were encouraged by their leadership to treat the civilians like shit because, they there's this mentality in the Army and the Marines especially that, intimidation, you can control people with intimidation, all right? Like, I think, to me, Afghanistan was like a practice run for us for martial law here, because we would go up into villages, people were minding their own fucking business. There ain't no one, I'm a pretty observant person, all right, and I wasn't getting no vibes, bad vibes. There wasn't anything wrong going on in this village, and our soldiers are throwing people around and butt stroking people. That means hitting someone with the butt of your weapon, with the butt of your gun, all right, for no reason, because it was funny, giving them pork and telling them it was something else because they know that they're Muslim and they don't eat pork, and basically making a joke out of their religion. You know what I mean? Like,